Hey guys, I'm Leech. I'm here for something fun this time. A friend of mine, Jessie Bear from Jessie Bear Book Club, she made a video a few days ago describing how her little backstory of how she got into the Song of Ice and Fire series. And I was like, that's fandom could use something fun right now. So I decided that maybe I'll share my backstory. So I first heard of the book series from my best friend and brother from another mother around 2009 or 2010. He and I have always shared new books or book series together after we individually read them for a time to see if it was something we wanted to share with the other. So we went back and forth with lots of books. We were just coming off of the Southern Vampire Mystery series, which is, that's a really fun, quick read. It is what it is. It's worth it if you want to get into it. Quick read, something light, take your mind off things. But anyway, we were going through that series when he told me that he had been reading this epic fantasy of a story that I might like. For some reason, I put it off reading it for months. I was like, no, I don't feel like it. No, that doesn't sound interesting. I don't feel like it. Can you even believe it? If anybody knows me, can you even believe I was saying those words? But it was a few months later that I borrowed his copy of A Game of Thrones. And my start time to A Song of Ice and Fire, I guess I could say is officially somewhere between A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, which A Dance with Dragons hadn't been announced for release just yet. So somewhere, between that 2009 to 2010 era. I know, I'm a slow reader, and I always have been, and I always will be, but whatever. Once we all get there, we can all enjoy it. There's so much out there that we should be doing this for fun. So continuing on, the HBO show started in 2011. I watched the first few episodes, and I felt that I needed to reread the first book. And I did just that. I stopped watching the show for a long while and caught up with reading the books, whichever ones were available at the time, and then went back and watched the first season after it was over. I didn't even know that there was a Dunk and Egg series out, and oh boy, as soon as I found that little mini series, I tore through that, reading it. I don't know, like 2-3 days. So after getting after I caught myself back up on the available books for A Song of Ice and Fire at the time, that's when I went back and watched the first season of the TV show. The rest of the TV show with me is history. That's a video for a different story, but oh well. So anyway, my time with George R. R. Martin as an author is a little bit different than my initial initiation into reading A Song of Ice and Fire. I've always loved anthology shows, and I still do. Really, really love them. And I remember the story Sand Kings from the Outer Limits TV show, even though I did not at first remember that it was a George story, because he had one of his author friends. I want to say it was Melinda Snodgrass, but that could be very wrong. She is the one that directed it, and she had to alter it for television purposes, as what happens. And it was after thinking back to Sand Kings and thinking and rediscovering who actually wrote it, and that I was like, hey, wait a minute, I think I know that guy from this story and this story. And also, I grew up in a very sci-fi heavy home, and once I rediscovered Martin after thinking to myself, hey, I know this guy from this story and this story, that's when I remembered thinking back to being a kid, because sci-fi stories and movies, especially movies, were on constantly at my home. That and music. And I remember Night Flyers, the movie. There's a movie version, if you can believe it, of Night Flyers from the mid 80s. I've remembered snippets of that. It did not have the same long-lasting effect to me as the movie like Alien did, but still it was a really cool callback to this author that I was rediscovering for a second time as an adult. So once I realized that some of these creepy stories that had lingered with me from childhood were all written by the same author, that's when I started collecting his works and watching everything else he did on screen. The birth of Martin World was inevitable. This shelf right here is just my Martin books. My other books are upstairs on other bookcases or right over there. They've become like working to almost like textbooks for me at this point. I have so many notes in them. There's even been a copy or two that I've had to repurchase because I wore my first copy out so much. So unlike my friend Jessie Bear, who was able to do something really cool, like participate as an extra for the Game of Thrones TV show, I had to get my in real life fun other ways. I started attending any functions where Martin was appearing mainly because I really love getting the backstory and history of events that brought him or anyone else of interest to the place where they are today. Real life world building, you could say. I had the chance to meet Martin a few times in 2016 at Balticon. I have a whole blog page about that if you want details. That was a really awesome event. Got some cool information out of Balticon 50. Anyway, let's keep going. And then I had a brief hello with him at the Fire and Blood release in New Jersey that I was there for. And most recently, in November 2019, before the shit hit the fan everywhere, I went to New York and I saw him for the Starport graphic novel release with Rhea Golden, and while I was in line, he sort of paused the line for a moment because I had him sign my first edition copy of The Glass Flower, and he paused the line for a moment to ask me about it, and it was really cool. I got to tell him that I've read all of his stories, and in brief, he told me that The Glass Flower is an important story to read. And I was like, yes, I extremely agree with that opinion of yours, sir. So I now have read all 80 plus of George's stories. The Two Dream Songs anthologies, between the two, they have less than half of his stories. But I encourage you to read them. Read whatever you can get your hands on, and don't skip the little mini autobiography sections. You learn a lot. The more you know about the man, the more you know about his Martin World writing style and decisions he makes. Many of my copies I have signed by him, but I also have like 2 or 3 copies of the same book just because I love the various art covers available. I'm an art nerd on the side. And above all, the most important thing to me is having the story. So like my copies of the A Song of Ice and Fire books are the ones down there. I have the hardcover art editions upstairs, but those have become like my working manifests at this point. And then some of my other copies there, or like my dream songs that I keep picking up and showing you. Sometimes it's more important for me to have the story rather than having like the most rarest, most expensive copy. It's like, I want the story. I want to know what's going on. So that's a brief, chat about how I got into A Song of Ice and Fire. It was because of my best friend, and at the time I was like, I am not up for fantasy right now, just like I've at various times in my life. Like, it took me forever to read George's story Fever Dream because I was like, I'm so vampired out. I was dead wrong about that story. So go read that if you have it. I've read that story probably 8 times at this point. Anyway, the books are always better. So go now and read something.